at the end of the day, we're here now, but has the central bank achieved its objective for this redesign in the first place? What do you see?
Thank you for that question. And that was going to be my first question to the governor of the central bank, to ask what was achieved in the last couple of months that you have done this. What was achieved? And for me, I find it very, very offensive that it's taking 2 weeks after the apex court of the land gave a directive, gave an injunction, and it's taken them 2 weeks to obey. Now the question is, who is the central bank governor to disobey a Supreme Court order? Because we have to be very, very serious with these conversations. Now, are we running a lawless system? Are we running a country
Recall that initially he said the central bank was not joined in the suit taking to the courts.
So all that is, we all know all that was semantics, really. It was really semantics. Because initially, so I think it was it February or so, or January, we had this particular conversation here where we're talking about the pros and the cons of the entire redesign of the Naira, saying this is how to go about it and all of that. And it was after that we heard that they didn't have paper to print. We were hearing all sorts of funny things that showed that
they came out to debunk that it wasn't true.
And if that wasn't true, what was the improvement in the system? Because as far as I'm concerned, this entire policy was done in bad faith towards Nigerians. No matter whatever ulterior motive they had, no matter whatever excuse they were telling us, it was done in bad faith, and it is inexcusable. And as far as I'm concerned, there should be some legal recourse for Nigerians, because a lot of people have suffered a lot of loss. I heard you talking about the woman you buy a banana from. We've seen videos all over of people who have had their means of livelihood affected by this particular policy. We're not saying it isn't good. We're saying the execution was poor. Clearly, it wasn't thought out through, and we're here now. And at the very end of it, what have you achieved? Saying that, okay, now we can go back to the same thing that we're talking about before. In the last couple of months, 1, what have you achieved? 2, what were the lessons you learned? Nigerians demand an answer, and Nigerians deserve an answer. We deserve to know. What did you learn? What are you doing to change it moving forward? Because until we have these answers, you will find that December 31st will come and we'll still be having these conversations, which is one thing that we like to do over here. We do not ask these questions and we do not get answers for them, even when we ask the questions. Because when there are no lessons learned, you are bound to make the same mistakes all over again. In this case, was it really a mistake? Was it really just mischief? Because for me, I really do not see any point whatsoever with this entire policy. We already had a system in place where we were complaining that, okay, you know what, we're still having issues with bank transfers and all of that. Now you overwhelm that particular system to the point where people had transactions hanging for 2 weeks. People did not have access to cash. People did not have access to bank transfers that were going through. In the last couple of weeks, I've heard at least 1 or 2, 3 people tell me that they had to sleep on the office because they work on the island, live on the mainland. People have to sleep in the office. People that work in the bank that don't even have access to cash. What kind of system are we running? Either it's an election season or not, the execution was poorly done. So we need to know, what was the objective? What was the real objective? Because we need to know what the real objective of this entire process was. Did you achieve it? Yes or no? So we need to know if you wasted our time, you wasted our resources, and you have caused a lot of damage to our economy, our already struggling economy. We got a report, was it 20 trillion naira that was said that we lost?
Yes. In
an economy that we're saying we are broke. Talking about subsidy coming off, people are struggling to see how they can live and survive as Nigerians. This is how we want to lead this country. And then we had the president come out to say, oh, I didn't tell him not to disobey the Supreme Court order. But did you impress on him the need to do so? Because at the end, the buck stops with you. You are the president.
It was the presidency that said it wasn't. It was the presidency.
The president is at the head of the presidency. Let us not do semantics this morning, Mike. The CBN governor serves at the pleasure of the president. I must be very honest with these conversations. He serves at the pleasure. If the president instructs him to obey the Supreme Court order, even without the AGF playing games with it as well, would he not obey it? You obey the court order or you're out of the job. It is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. Nigerians are languishing. You have people living like destitutes, people that have money. There was a report of a gentleman that was walking to the office and died on the way.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We heard that story.
What kind of country do we live in? People are already under a lot of stress, a lot of tension. You do not need to add to it. It is not necessary. And what recourse do we get? No apology, no explanation, no nothing. It isn't good enough. He needs to be prosecuted. Something needs to be done. It's unacceptable. We cannot keep governing people like this. We cannot be running this country like this, where people act with impunity. Who is he? You are the governor of the central bank, and then you seem to be above the law? Where's that done?
Is it possible that the central bank is just made to take the fall instead of the government? Because the point there is there's nothing the CBN is going to do if it doesn't have the
Directive
blessing
or
of-
the
the
backing
blessing of
from
the
the federal
Exactly. So
government.
that is why that's why I made a statement earlier that I said the statement by the president or the presidency or whichever you want to put it
Presidency.
it doesn't hold water.
Right.
It doesn't hold water. Oh, we didn't tell you not to obey. But did you tell him to obey? Because in the end, they are in cahoots with this entire thing. So you can tell me that maybe the presidency, they are not very familiar with monetary policies, or he gave them wrong advice. But you'll be getting feedback from Nigerians for weeks about the hardship going on. We did not elect the CBN governor. We elected the person at the head of the presidency. Is he not meant to be sensitive to our plight as a people? He is supposed to, so the buck stops with him. So plus the president, the presidency, the CBN governor, the CBN, all of them, they need to be held to account. It is unacceptable. We cannot keep running this country like this. It is not acceptable. We are free citizens in our own country. We cannot keep living as if we are destitutes. For what reason?
Right. Right.
in other developed countries. For the government to say, Nigerians, we are sorry for what has happened. We didn't expect it to be this way. But the way it is right now, we're coming up with something else to ensure that this ends, and this is how we want to going forward. And because of this and because of that, we are now ensuring that we give you this, and we give you that, and we give you this, and all of that. They didn't come up to say that. Do you think this is really a re-echo of what a lot of people say is ego, just ego?
Yes, ego has a role to play, but I think what has the bigger role to play is the lack of empathy, which is something that we have always discussed here, that you cannot be an effective leader if you do not have empathy for the people you say you lead. Unfortunately, we have had that with a lot of our leaders, if not forever, in this country, that we have leaders that lack empathy for the people that they lead because, like I said, I see no reason why the reactions we've gotten the last couple of weeks will have gone. So if there was empathy, there was no reason for the Supreme Court to have gotten involved in this matter in the first place. There was no reason, because Nigerians have been complaining daily, that this is what we're going through. These are the challenges. And it wasn't localized to maybe urban centers or rural areas. It was everybody, everywhere. So if there was empathy at play, you would be able to say, okay, you know what, let's see how we can walk this back. Do we extend the time? What do we need to put in place? We're saying they should do mobile transfers. Did we get any data ahead of time before we made this policy to say that, okay, the mobile transfers that we are saying they should resort to now, what was the success rate before we are adding all of this pressure to it? Because really, we may talk about running the country like a business or doing things efficiently. On some levels, certain things are really just common sense, right? It's really just common sense. You don't need to have a university degree or tertiary institution degree to know that putting together a policy like this, you need to work with data. The people who are the closest to the citizens are the commercial banks. You are their regulator. Call them. Let them know that you need X, Y, Z data. You don't need to tell them the reason why. I said this earlier on, a couple of weeks ago when we had this conversation. Data would inform the policy you make and let you know, is it going to succeed? Is it going to fail? this policy to execute this, do I need 3 months, do I need 6, do I need 9, do I need 12 or 18 months to execute it sufficiently if it is done in good faith? Because I will say again that good faith is one thing that is very missing in this particular conversation, as well as empathy. Data will let you know that for the online transactions that were done 6 to 9 months before December, that you said you want to implement the entire policy, oh, this is the failure rate, this is the success rate. And then saying, okay, this policy would add more pressure to this system. I don't think it's quite feasible. So how about we see how we can improve on the online platforms to ensure... Fortify the system to ensure that when there's more demand placed on the system, it doesn't crumble. Because it's really just common sense. But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. So that's why I said there's a lot of mischief and there's a lot of bad faith in the system. And Nigerians deserve a lot more. We deserve a lot better. And certain things, legal action needs to be taken, because I don't know, civic society, other folks around, action needs to be taken, because we have gone on. Are you confident
you see that?
Not sure, but we must put it out there, because in some cases you will find that certain folks do not even realize that it is an option. So they do not know that it can be done. But we must let people know that, yes, it is an option and it can be done. Will we get the justice we deserve? Maybe not. But will we make a statement that you do not take Nigerians for granted? Yes, we will. Because we are where we are today because there has been a lot of action with lack of consequence. That is why we are where we are today. And with regards to the Supreme Court and the CBN governor, I will emphasize that there needs to be action taken. This is why. The particular word I say on this platform every single time, precedence. Because now the CBN governor has shown impunity towards the Supreme Court order. What will motivate any other public official to obey the court order of any other court in the land, let alone the Supreme Court? Because what is good for the goose is good for the gander. And we must be very careful what precedents we are setting, what signals we are sending, and what message we are passing along about how we run our system. If we are a lawless country, or if we are a land that says that we are governed by laws, and we're saying we're civilized people, and we're saying these are the things that separates us from the people in the jungle.
All right, Marin Dotty mentioned earlier that they were going to institute a class action, so perhaps he might need to come in agreement with what he said?
Yes, I am. And I'd like to address part of what Mike said as to how justiciable this will be.
Yes.
And him being out of office, saying that part of what he did was part of the CBN's policy. However, if you add economic sabotage to it, is that within his charter as CBN governor? Because that's the byproduct, yes or no?
Well, it could be deducted. You could interpret it.
That's the byproduct of his policy. Now, the objective of every economic policy is to drive economic growth.
Right.
Now, doesn't mean they are always perfect, but it could mean that they could have certain shortfalls, but not grinding the economy of a country to almost a total halt, to where there are massive losses within the system across board. So that is part of the conversation that I believe that we need to have when we're talking about this.
In their own, recall that sometime, was it in November or October, when they came up with this policy, there were lined out objectives as to how they want and the reason for this policy and so on.
Yes.
So from that window, they may not, of course, nobody expects them to see it as sabotage. This is a policy of government that is meant to make the economy better and to ensure that inflation is brought down, and as the case may be, to reduce excess liquidity in the
So at the point of execution, and then you are saying that from day one, everything was going southward. What were they supposed to do? Did they bother to backtrack after getting all of that feedback from Nigerians? I believe that Nigerians have a case to be made against them.
In fact, the central bank at the time, I think it was in December or so, there was a statement, report that they even said there was sabotage within the system, sabotaging the policy, the effort of the central bank at the time.
That's beautiful. So when you take the CBN to court, you take Godwin to court, the people who are saboteurs or mini saboteurs to the system Bring them along too. Sue them along. It is beautiful. Let us cleanse the system of all the insanity and know the people that put us in this mess.
Right.
But I still maintain that there must be legal action taken and Nigerians must get some form of reprieve.
And
for
we
this
already
madness
have
that
one
happened.
in the pipeline. Let
Yes,
me
and
come
I'm
to
hoping
you.